Red Tape Authority to the Senate Committee on Finance to order. Good afternoon, Your Honors. We'd like to acknowledge the senators present online. We have Vice Chair Amy Marcos, but I believe the DSWD subcommittee budget is ongoing, no? She's chairing that. So, but nevertheless, we acknowledge her as a vice chair of this committee and other senators as they will come in. And we'd like to also acknowledge the officials of the Anti-Red Tape Authority present. We have Arta Secretary Jeremiah Belhica. Good afternoon, sir. Yusek Perez, Yusek Kita, Director Castro, Director Nang, Director Flores, Attorney Cainza Tang, Attorney Sumagi, Ms. Joyce Pereña, and Ms. Zantua. So these are the officials present, and we'd like to turn it over to Secretary Belhica for his presentation on behalf of Arta. Good afternoon to all the officials present.
Good afternoon. With the indulgence of the good chairman, Mr. Senator, magandang hapon po sa inyo, and also to our Vice Chair, Senator Amy Marcos. A pleasant and safe afternoon. We would want to share our slide, Mr. Chairman, if you may, sir.
Yes, please. Comsec.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Chair, okay. This is our presentation for our budget proposal. Next slide, please. The outline of the presentation would be Arta's performance report for since inception until today, the status of our budget utilization for 2020-2021, the findings and recommendation, including the management comments of the Commission on Audit, and also our budget proposal, PAPs, activities and projects for 2022. Mr. Chair, I was informed by the Secretariat that we are actually given 10 minutes. So what we'll do, Mr. Chair, is to show a video that would summarize, approximate, Mr. Chair, ang amin pong ginawa thus far sa Arta. Next slide, please. On the performance report, Mr. Chair, we would want to present a 7-minute video, Mr. Chair. Please.
In a bid to lower logistics costs in the Philippines, the Anti-Red Tape Authority intensifies its crackdown on local government units illegally charging pass-through fees on trucks transporting goods.
Fixer sa Land Transportation Office timbog sa ikinasang entrapment operation ng PNP CIDG at Anti-Red Tape Authority.
Pinagpapaliwanag ng Arta o ng Anti-Red Tape Authority ang mga ahensya ng gobyerno na pinuna ng Pangulo dahil sa mabagal na serbisyo.
Isa sa mga pinakabatang ahensya sa gobyerno ang Anti-Red Tape Authority o Arta. Pero sa maikli lamang na panahon, nakapagpatupad na ito ng maraming reforma para mapabilis at mapaganda ang serbisyo ng pamahalaan. Tulad ng regular na pagsasagawa ng Regulatory Impact Assessment o RIA training. Bawat ahensyang kalahok, pinagsusumite ng Regulatory Impact Statement para gabayan ng mga decision makers sa mga epekto ng pag-adopt ng isang regulasyon. Bumuo rin ang Arta ng Whole of Government o WOG Re-Engineering Manual, pati ang kauna-unahang Philippine Good Regulatory Principles o PGRP.
Masama yung audio, Comsec.
Ng mga tanggapan sa gobyerno,
Hindi natin
na hindi dagdag
audio is
pasakit sa publiko. Ang kanilang
intelligible.
mga isinusulong na polisiya. Pangunahing advokasya rin ng Arta ang digitalization at automation ng mga serbisyo sa publiko. Ilan sa mga proyekto ng Arta katuwangan DTI at DICT ang Central Business Portal o CBP para sa mga nagpaparehistro ng korporasyon at Integrated Business Permits and Licensing System o IBPLS na para sa online application ng mga permit na kinakailangan sa pagtatayo ng negosyo. Nakatutok din ang Arta para matiyak na on-time ang onboarding ng Trade Regulatory Government Agencies o TRGA sa TradeNet, isang web platform na nagpapabilis sa proseso ng pag-aangkat at pagluluwas ng produkto. Operational na rin ang Philippine Business Regulations Information System o PBRIS ng Arta, kung saan makukuha ang iba't ibang regulasyon ng pamahalaan. At Anti-Red Tape Electronic Management Information System o Artemis na naglalaman naman ng Citizens Charter o listahan ng mga rekisito at haba ng oras ng pagproseso ng mga request sa mga ahensya ng gobyerno. Pero bukod sa mga ito, sinasabayan din ng Arta ng streamlining sa mga sektor na kilalang may mga masasalimuot na proseso. Yan ay sa ilalim ng flagship program nitong National Effort for the Harmonization of Efficient Measures of Interrelated Agencies o NEHIMAYA. Nagdulot ito ng pinakamalaking ginhawa sa telco sector matapos sumipa sa higit 33,000 ang nailabas na tower permits. Dahil sa pinasimple at pinaikling proseso ng pagkuha sa mga ito na dati inaabot ng ilang buwan. Kita naman ang epekto nito sa patuloy na pagbuti ng net speed ng bansa batay sa mga report ng UCLA. At dahil ganap na talagang digital age, gumawa ang Arta ng Arta Citizen Services App at dashboard para mas maging abot kamay ng mamamayang nagrereklamo kontra red tape. Pero bago pa man ito, may mga mekanismo ng Arta sa pagtanggap ng mga complaint bilang pagtupad sa enforcement function nito. Kabilang dito ang Sumbungan ng Bayan program na Artahin Mo. Isinasalang dito ang mga reklamong idinulog sa Arta para maaksyonan ora mismo. Pinaigting din ng otoridad ang entrapment operations nito. Sa pakikipagtulungan sa PNP, hindi bababa sa 13 na ang naaresto nilang lumabag sa Republic Act 11032 o Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act of 2018 mula Mayo hanggang Agosto 2021. Maglalagay rin ng Artang Bayan Outpost ang Arta sa mga fixer-prone area. Sa datos ng otoridad, higit 6,000 complaints at concerns na ang inaksyonan nito mula 2018. Lagpas 500 na rin ang nakasuhan ng Arta. At sa dami ng complaints platform ng Arta, siguradong madaragdagan pa ang mga sasangguni rito. Agad ding kumilos ang Arta sa mga direktiba ni Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Kasama rito ang pagtulong ng Arta na maparami ang lokal na supply ng bakuna kontra COVID-19 sa pamamagitan ng Green Lane at maaksyonan ang mga matagal nang nakabinbing benepisyo ng mga nasa unipormadong hanay. Dahil sa mga inisyatibong ito ng Arta, ang mga dating problema na inakala nating bahagi na ng sistema, unti-unti nang natutugunan.
Ako na mismo magsasabi, tumapit kayo sa Arta or Anti-Red Tape Authority sa pangunguna ng ating mabuting Director General Jeremiah Maybelica na handang tumulong sa atin lahat kung may mga problema.
Puso po talaga ako nagpapasalamat at walang hanggang pasasalamat yung naitulong sa amin ng Arta. Dahil kasi kailangan na po namin yung death claim na yun. Lalo na because of pandemic, wala talaga kaming maibayad sa bills.
Kita rin ang positibong pagbabago sa inaasahang pag-angat ng Pilipinas mula sa starter stage patungong enabled stage sa regulatory management system na ngayon lang mangyayari makalipas ang 2 dekada. 29 na baitang din ang nilundag natin sa 2020 Doing Business Report ng World Bank. Patunay na bumubuti ang karanasan ng pagnenegosyo sa bansa. Pero marami pang gagawin ng Arta para sa kaginhawaan ng taong bayan. Kasama na rito ang pagdaragdag ng mga tauhan at pagbibigay ng mga kinakailangang kagamitan.
The national government shall lead the way in our transition to online systems. I reiterate my call for all government instrumentalities to implement systems that shall make physical queuing a thing of the past. Panahon na para mawala na ang pila para mapagsilbihan ang gobyerno ng walang kahirapan para sa tao.
Ang tren ho ng reforma laban sa red tape ay tumatakbo na po at pabilis ng pabilis. At ang sino man pong humarang dito ay tiyak pong masasagasaan.
Kaya, tara na't sumakay sa tren ng reforma.
Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing us to show that video. Marami ho itong slides ko pero hindi ko na ho papakita lahat, Mr. Chair, dahil medyo na-summarize po dun sa video ang marami. But I just want to take off from the President's directive po lagi during SONA to simplify and to already push for e-governance which would enable our bureaucracy to better transition in the new normal and minimize red tape. Next slide po. Mr. Chair, ang Arta po ay may dalawang functions. Kami po ay enforcement and empowerment function. Next slide please. Pag sinabi pong enforcement, Mr. Chair, ito po yung pag-iimbestiga at pagpa-file po ng kaso at meron din ho kami mga entrapments. At meron ho kami ang empowerment function, Mr. Chair, kung saan kami nagbibigay ng mga recommendations sa mga agencies at tinutulungan ho namin sila to capacitate themselves to streamline their own services. Ang ahensya po ang nag-streamline ng kanila pong serbisyo. Ang Arta po ay tinutulungan sila to do it by capacitating them also. Next slide please. Mr. Chair, I would now jump quickly lang po para ipakita lang ho sa atin yung efforts natin on regulatory management system. Mr. Chairman, ang midterm at long-term solution po sa problema po natin sa red tape, sa mahabang pila, sa mahihirap po na silo system of operations, Mr. Chairman, is ang pag-develop po natin ng management system po ng ating mga regulation. According po ito sa pag-aaral po mismo ng OECD na kung saan sinasabi ho nila for the past 20 years, ang Pilipinas po ay have been stuck in a starter stage ng ating regulation. So meaning po, sir, ito ho ang gusto natin mangyari na we slowly transition from starter until we reach the embedded phase. So, bibilisan ko lang sir para makita ho natin ano ho yung efforts natin sa pagpapatibay ho ng ating regulatory management system. Next slide. So, there are 4 elements, Mr. Chairman, according po sa OECD at ASEAN, ng good regulatory management system, which is policies, institutions, tools, and processes. Lahat ho ng efforts ng Arta, Mr. Chairman, maika-categorize po namin dito sa policies, institution, tools, and processes. Next slide. Talunan ho namin, Mr. Chair, ito po on the policies, ayan po yung batas ho natin na Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007, yung bagong EODB law na Arta law po ngayon na pinungunahan po ng ating pong Senator Meg Zubiri at ng buong Senado, ang mga executive issuances, ang pagkakaroon po natin ng kauna-unahang Philippine Good Regulatory Principles na ito po yung counterpart ng Regulators Code ng UK. At ang marami hong memorandum circulars at GMCs na inilabas na po natin sa loob ng 2 taon. Next slide. Tatalunan ko na po, Mr. Chairman, yung iba. Next slide po. So, ito po. No? Next slide. Okay, next slide po tayo. Mr. Chairman, ito lang po yung Philippine Good Regulatory Principles na napakahalaga po na to kasi for the first time, meron na po tayo na to and we are already, we have rolled this out already. We developed this together with the United Kingdom Department of Business, Energy, and Industrial Strategy. And we are grateful, Mr. Chair, kasi marami ngayon na ang tumatangkilik na po na itong good regulatory principles or regulators code. Next slide, please. Sige pa po. Mr. Chairman, on the institutions, alam ho natin na may mga several institutions na nabuo ang batas at patuloy na rin po through executive orders at sa pamagitan din ho ng Arta. So the institutions is the Anti-Red Tape Authority, of course, the Advisory Council of Arta, the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Streamlining of Government Processes, the Oversight Committee by Congress and Senate, the Civil Service Anti-Red Tape Unit, at yung Committees on Anti-Red Tape or CART, Mr. Chairman, ito po napakahalaga na require na po natin ng lahat ng mga agencies na magtayo na kinilang mga anti-red tape committees sa loob ho ng mga ehensya. And lastly, number 7 is the Arta Champions. Ito naman po yung counterpart sa private sectors. Marami na ho tayong mga private sectors na kasama na po natin, and we call them Arta Champions, Mr. Chairman. And they've been really, fantastic in giving us kanilang pong feedback, sumbong, recommendations. Kaya ho natin nagagawa. Next slide po. We'll just move along. Okay, Mr. Chairman, ito po ang listahan lang ng ilan sa ating mga Arta Champions na po ngayon who has been very active po in really assisting Arta. The PCCI, the Guild of Real Estate Entrepreneurs and Professionals, the Confederation of Filipino Workers, the JCI, the Manila Times, the Flash Media, the Rotary Club, the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce of the Philippines, the entrepreneurs organizations. And there are others, Mr. Chairman, who are also joining already. And hindi lang sila nagsusumbong, Mr. Chairman, pero nagbibigay ho ng kanilang recommendation. Next slide, please. On the tools naman, Mr. Chair, ito ho yung ilan sa mga tools na na-develop na po natin. Napakahalaga, Mr. Chairman, yung National Regulatory Impact Assessment Manual. This is the global practice po ngayon kung paano natutulungan ang mga agencies all over the world na to self-assess themselves kung mahirap, kung red tape ridden po ba ang bagong regulation na kailang ilalabas. So meron na ho tayo na for the first time the whole of government re-engineering manual, the report card survey, all of this, the Philippine Business Regulations Information System, the Central Business Portal, the Integrated Business Permit and Licensing System for the LGUs. Around 900 na po, Mr. Chair, ang currently na in-expect po natin na matapos ang kanilang automation sa mga LGUs po. The TradeNet and the Citizens Charter, the Arta Dashboard, and the Services Application. Next slide, please. So ito po, Mr. Chairman, yung Regulatory Impact Assessment Manual. Ito rin ho ang itinutulak ng both ng OECD at ng ASEAN para ho mas lalong mapabuti po natin ang ating regulatory management sa ating hong bayan to capacitate the agencies to use this manual. This year, Mr. Chairman, we are going to have a grand launching on October 28. Ang RIA manual po natin that was developed through the assistance of the USAID and UP PAF Respond, Mr. Chair. Although sa ngayon ho, meron na ho tayong mga mahigit sa 100 na ahensya na na-pilot, release na po natin ito. Next slide, please. Ayan po, ang timelines lang po, Mr. Chair, on the bottom part. Next slide po. Ito na ho, 152 agencies, key agencies we started to try this new RIA manual. 24 agencies, key agencies, no, yung mga challenged agencies, ang nagsumiti na po ng kanilang regulatory impact statements. Next slide, please. Next slide po. Yan po yung report card survey. Next slide po. Mr. Chairman, ito naman ho yung Philippine Business Regulations Information System. Isa rin hong system na amin hong na-develop sa tulong din po ng USAID at ng UP PAF Respond. Basically, Mr. Chair, dito ho sa website na ito at application, pwede na hong puntahan ng taong bayan para malaman ho nila ang iba't ibang regulations concerning their own transaction or businesses. So we're talking about regulations here, Mr. Chair, kasi isa ho sa mga sources ng red tape at kaya ho tumatagal ang mga processing ng taong bayan is hindi ho nila alam kung ano ho ang mga applicable rules and regulations. So since last year we've been consulting and also developing this application, and last September 20 nagkaroon ho kami ng phase 1 launched po, and by the beginning of next year or the end of this year, Mr. Chair, mas bubuksan na ho natin ito sa lahat ng mga agencies. Philippine Business Regulation Information System. Next slide, please. The Central Business Portal, ito po yung ating vision, Mr. Chair, na magkaroon ho ng isang central platform na kung saan ng lahat ng business-related licenses ng lahat ng government agency, may it be national or local, ay maaari ho nating makita sa isang platform o through the Central Business Portal. Na we are happy to say, Mr. Chair, noong January 28, we already launched the first phase of the Central Business Portal kasama ang SEC, BIR, SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig at ang ilang mga choice LGUs, Mr. Chair. And we were able to cut down using the Central Business Portal what used to take 33 days of registering your company until the LGU, from 33 days to now 3 to 5 days, Mr. Chairman, if they would be using the Central Business Portal. By the end of the year, Mr. Chairman, maisasama na rin po natin ng DTI at ang Cooperative Development Authority of the Philippines para ho ma-streamline din po sila. So ang amin pong goal ho nila Secretary Lopez at DICT, Mr. Chair, is magawa ho natin in one day ang registration across these different government agencies. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, ito po yung IBPLS naman. Ito po yung software na ipinamimigay po ng DICT at tinutulungan po ng Arta na to ensure na ang ating mga LGUs ay meron po silang online system. Sa ngayon, meron na po tayong 902 na LGUs. Ang siyang kumuha na po na to and in the process, Mr. Chair, of finishing up their automation to using the IBPLS software. We hope, Mr. Chair, that by the end of the administration's term, lahat po ng 1,600 would at least have started, Mr. Chair, ang kanila pong automation. But at least ngayon, Mr. Chairman, 902 na po ang gumagamit ng IBPLS natin, meaning yung business permit and yung building permit system, Mr. Chair, ay sakop po dito sa ating IBPLS software. Next slide, please. On the TradeNet platform, this is the National Single Window Project. The TradeNet is the online platform. Ang Arta naman po ay tumutulong na doon sa project na ito na to ensure that the 73 trade regulatory government agencies ay magsusumiti po na kailang streamlined processes at mag-on-board ho dun sa platform. When we started, meron lamang ho yatang 2 or 3, Mr. Chair, but we are happy that now at least 67 of the agencies have already started and we hope, Mr. Chair, na matapos ho natin ang 73 within the term po, if not within this year, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, very important, ang Citizens Charter, 82.76 of all government agencies, which is our universe is 10,174, have already submitted to Arta their revised Citizens Charter in compliance with RA 11032. The 17.24% are being sent notices of warning, Mr. Chair. So ongoing pa rin po ito, Mr. Chair, and we know that by the end of this year, we hopefully ay matapos ho natin ang 100%. Some areas of challenges, Mr. Chair, are the LGUs na malalayo po sa atin at wala ho sila masyadong technology, Mr. Chair, to comply with this one. Pero we are already engaging also the partnership of DILG for the LGUs and of course the ULAP, Mr. Chair, for the leagues of local authorities. Next slide, please. Next slide. Ito lang ho yung dashboard namin, Mr. Chair, na amin pong dinidevelop para mas mabilis. Yung Arta Citizen Service App, in-automate na rin ho namin yung complaint system, Mr. Chair, para through the use of QR coding, pwede ho magreklamo sa amin ang mga iba't ibang taong bayan sa mga opisina na nagpapahirap ho sa kanila. Simply by having a QR code, it would already lead them to the Arta's online complaints desk. And almost real time, mapapadalhan po ang agency ng notice to explain sa mga reklamo po ng tao. Next slide, please. On the processes, Mr. Chair, next slide po. The program ni Himaya has been having a lot of headways, Mr. Chair. Next slide po. So, ito po, Mr. Chair, ang aming working picture po on the Nehemiah program sa telecommunications. Salamat din po sa pinasaho ng Senado on the streamlining din po ng mga telcos sa pagtutulungan din po, and also the GMCs na inisyo po natin. We were able to reduce the 30 permits to 8 permits, 86 requirements to 35, to 241 days to 16 days. On the logistics sector, Mr. Chair, we have already issued one joint memorandum circular together with other agencies, pero very soon, Mr. Chair, matapos din po natin yung Unified Logistics Pass po natin together with the DOST. So what used to take 209 would be 56, and what used to 71 days to 35, Mr. Chair. Dito sa food and pharma, Mr. Chair, tapos na po tayo. Na-reduce na po yung 29 to 9 steps, 41 requirements to 12, 63 days to 21 days, at least for until the securing of a license to operate ng mga pharmaceutical companies po kapag sila yung nagtatayo po ng negosyo. Next slide, please. Sa housing, Mr. Chair, ito po naka-routing na po, pinirmahan na po ng ilang mga kasamahan natin ang streamlining ng housing sector together with the SHUD, kaila Secretary De Rosario. The 11 steps ay ma-automate na po at meron naka-assign na lamang po na isang tao, Mr. Chair, na kanila pong pagsusumitahan, and it would reduce what used to take 475 days to 108 days. On the construction permits, Mr. Chair, ito po ay tapos na rin at ito po pinipirmahan. Rinaroute na po ito, Mr. Chair. What used to take 22 steps, ma-reduce po into 3 steps. And yung 120 days on the construction permits would now fall 3 days, 7 days, or 20 days, depending on the nature of the transaction, whether simple, complex, or highly technical. Next slide. Ito po ang result, Mr. Chair. 33,778 new permits for towers were released according to ang private sector po. No? Dati ho 6,000 a year lamang, sir. Ngayon ay nakaka 33,000.
Is this in a one-year period, Secretary?
That is
Over
correct.
what period, yeah?
From July 23, Mr. Chair, when we issued the joint memorandum circular, until I believe August 31, Mr. Chair.
July
if I'm not
23
mistaken.
of this year, Sec?
July 23 last year, Mr.
Last year.
Chair.
So like a 13-month period.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman, sir. So
That's very
from
good,
6,000, sir, it's very encouraging, sir. In fact, next slide po, that's the reason why po medyo nag-increase ang ating steady increase po, no, ang ating internet, because the number of towers that were created, that were built, we're really catching up fast, Mr. Chairman. Pero what we are actually excited for po is itong susunod na JMC naman natin, sir. On the cables naman, sir, yung laying down of cables, pati yung sharing po ng mga poste, para kasi ho yung mga what they call that, yung fiber optics natin, sir, kinakailangan ho i-lay down sa ilalim ng lupa or sa ibabaw, sir, yung mga poste. So we have already signed actually ng DICT and Arta, and the other agencies are already signing it. Mas streamline rin ho natin, Mr. Chairman, and I believe according sa DICT, mas bibilis pa daw ang ating internet on this. So we did not include that in our report as kasi pinipirmahan pa ho, Mr. Chair, in route pa ho sa different agencies. Next slide po. Mr. Chairman, ito naman po yung anti-red tape electronic management information.
Before you continue, Sec, sorry, I'd like to acknowledge our Vice Chair, Senator Win Gatchalian, also Vice Chair of the committee. Good afternoon, sir. We might be interested to ask you, I'm also interested sa power sector because Senator
Sir,
Win
yes, sir.
sponsored a one-stop shop law for the power, I think that's for power plants ba, Senator Win? To put up a power plant? Ano ba yung sa one-stop shop?
To put up a power plant and other energy-related businesses.
That's a law already, no? That's a law.
Already, sa law.
Yeah. Meron ba tayong memorandum, meron tayong issuance pursuant to that, Secretary Belica? Very
Yes,
important
Mr.
yun dahil
Chairman.
there are reports we could be having a power shortage in the next few years.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Una ho, good afternoon, Senator Win, Vice Chair, magandang hapon po, sir. As always. Sir, yung sa program ni Himaya, Mr. Chairman, kasama po kasi ang energy sector sa initially na amin pong in-identify. When I started in Arta, there were 5 sectors, no? Telecommunications, logistics, housing, food and pharma, and lastly is the energy. So when we were already starting, doon ko ho nalaman na meron na ho pala tayong energy virtual one-stop shop. And ang authority po ng Arta doon is parang support role po kami doon sa steering committee, Mr. Chairman, ng kanila because the steering committee ng EVOS ang siya pong may primary power jurisdiction on the streamlining processes. So, hindi ho member ang Arta doon, pero we are in a support role. But Mr. Chair, this year, I believe there's yung lifespan po nung steering committee ay natapos, I think, nung March po. So may lumabas po ng executive order, Mr. Chairman, which also directed Arta to coordinate our efforts with the Office of the Presidents and DOE on the streamlining initiative of the EVOS. So, Mr. Chair, doon ho kami, sir, na naka-rely doon ho sa aming support role po sa kanila on streamlining. Even, Mr. Chair, there are complaints na pumapasok po sa Arta. Inaksyonan din po ng Arta yung mga complaints na yon on the energy sector. However, Mr. Chair, because of the issuance also, we discussed with the DOE na ang amin pong system po dyan kapag may mga energy complaints is i-direct din po namin sa Office of the President and also the DOE. Kasi ho in compliance with the EVOS law, Mr. Chair. So, yun po, Mr. Chairman, ang amin pong role po dyan is support po and hindi ho kami primary jurisdiction. But we would be more than be willing, Mr. Chair, kung kami po ay maisasama o makakagawa po ng iba pa hong mga action dyan.
Okay, sige. Please, unless Senator Gatchalian has some questions, you can continue. Sen Win, any questions on that? No?
Mr. Chair, after the presentation na lang, I'll ask.
Okay. Okay. Continue na, Secretary. Thank you.
Sir, thanks, sir. So this is the Anti-Red Tape Electronic Management Information System or the Artemis. Basically, Mr. Chairman, meron ho tayong application ngayon na available na ang mga taong bayan could already download. Makikita po nila ang lahat ng mga citizens charter ng mga lahat ng agencies na nag-submit sa Arta. So malaking bagay po ito kasi imbes na pumunta pa sila sa ahensya, hanapin lang yung citizens charter, they could already find it through our Artemis platform, Mr. Chairman. Next slide, please. Okay, sir, we have improved as I think the chair already knows, our ranking from 124 to 95. Ito pong huling-huli, Mr. Chair, na nilabas po ng World Bank dahil natapos po, no, they discontinued the study. Unfortunately, but fortunately for us, nagkaroon ho tayo ng malaking improvement from 124 to 95 sa 2020 and 2019 from 57 to 62. And Mr. Chair, historically, the 62.8 na doing business score po natin is the highest in our history. So at least we ended in a high note pero hindi na ho natin, wala na ho ito after 2020, Mr. Chair. For some data irregularities from other countries, na nakita po ng World Bank. Next slide, please. But that having been said, Mr. Chair, nag-submit pa rin ho tayo ng total of 55 additional reforms and 13 data corrections. And also for 2022, nag-submit pa rin ho tayo ng 102 new reforms and 23 data corrections. Next slide, please. But ito nga po, no, there was a mention that the World Bank would be discontinuing the report. Next slide. Pero ways forward natin, Mr. Chair, is Arta recommended in our advisory council to localize, sir, yung ease of doing business ranking sa mga LGUs, sa mga NGAs. Kasi napakaganda po nung naging ugali ng healthy competition amongst peers. So ayan po, sir, no, we are integrating this in the report card survey guidelines na ilalabas po ng Arta, yung localized ranking po natin dito sa Pilipinas. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair, just to summarize, nung binanggit ko po kanina, there are 4 elements, 4 na sangkap ang good regulatory management system ayon po sa OECD. Policies, institutions, tools, and processes. So, ito sir, ang aming trinatrabaho ng patuloy para mag-mature po ang ating regulatory management sa ating pong bansa. Next slide, please. Other accomplishment, mabilis na lamang po to, yung Green Lane, Mr. Chair, na natapos po natin for the establishment of permits for local manufacturing fill and finish plants for the vaccines. Next slide po. On the uniform personnel naman po, ito ho, perennial na problema po ito, yung mga namatayan po ng mga uniform personnel, yung mga naiwan nila, yung nag-retire, hirap na hirap sa processing. So nakagawa na rin po tayo ng interagency task force at meron na rin ho tayong streamlined procedures that we launched last September 30. Next slide, please. Ito lang po, no, yung continuation, marami na ho tayong natugunan ng mga payments and pensions ng mga uniform personnel. Next slide, please. Ito ho, patuloy ho yung aming inspections, surprise inspections sa mga LGUs, lalong-lalo na po dito sa mga highly urbanized cities po. Next slide, please. Mga entrapment operations, Mr. Chair, just for this year, meron ho tayong 13 fixers and cases na na-file din ho sa mga ibang agencies because of fixing activities dun sa labas po ng kanilang mga offices. Mr. Chairman, kasi ho ang nakalulungkot na nakita ho namin, kadalasan kapag may umaali-aligid po na fixer sa labas, ang sinasabi po ng ibang agencies on the ground, hindi na raw po nila trabaho yon kasi nasa labas ng kalambakuran. Pero hindi ho pwede kasing dahilan yon, Mr. Chair, parang buntot ho kasi ng ahas yon. So, hinuhuli po ng Arta. And nagpasalamat naman kami, Mr. Chair, because LTO, BIR already conducted also their own entrapment operation since then. So nadagdagan pa ho, I think even LTO had around 20 to 40 na entrapment operations after when we started this on May. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, just a snapshot of the complaints, no? Of the concerns. Right now, ang complaints po, pag sinabi natin complaints, ito po yung may mga affidavit, Mr. Chairman. Kasi ho, pag wala hong affidavit, hiningan po namin, hindi ho namin ma-file sa ombudsman, sa civil service. Pero meron naman ho mga nagbibigay ng complaints, ng affidavits. So there is right now 406 live complaints that we are hearing and also investigating. There are concerns, Mr. Chair, mga Facebook complaints, mga Facebook concerns na pinapaalam po sa Arta na hindi ho nagbibigay ng complaint affidavit pero inimbestigahan pa rin ho namin. So 1,870 po, Mr. Chair. But cases that were resolved either naibigay ho, no, natulungan sa permit, hindi na ho bumalik o na-close na po natin is 4,200 historically. Mr. Chair, the cases filed as of now is at 532. Ito po, Mr. Chair, yung na-file ho namin sa ombudsman or sa civil service or doon ho sa mga ibang agencies na concerned, no? Yung kasama na rin ho yung mga entrapment po natin. Meron ho tayong mga dineclare na automatically approved na mga permits and licenses through Arta po. Meron na po 8,524 permits or licenses na inipit pero dineclare po ng Arta as automatically approved. And we're happy to note, Mr. Chair, siguro 99.9 99% po dyan na dineclare natin, inilabas naman ho ng agency yung mga dineclare po natin na automatically approved. Yung iba lamang po na hindi, yun ho ay kinasuhan naman po natin, Mr. Chairman. Next slide po. And hopefully, Mr. Chair, baka ho umabot pa ho ito ng 1,000 cases po by the end of the term po ng ating administration. There have been 22 policy recommendations that Arta already issued to different national government agencies, position papers on the streamlining of cooperatives and issuance of certificate of tax exemption sa Senate bills po na binigay ho namin. Pati ho ang position po namin on Senate bills on the Passport Act, Lifetime Passport for senior citizens, positions po namin on the streamlining on loan application sa MSMEs, Mr. Chair, na dinidinig din po namin. Next slide, please. Next slide na po. Just in awareness campaign. Next slide po. Many webinars yan po, Mr. Chair. Next slide po. Mr. Chair, this year, first time ho kaming naglipat ho ng amin pong bagong tahanan dito ho sa Quezon City. So, we started April 1. Arta is a very new agency po. First time yung mga employees po, nag-appoint ho kami ng employees, nagka-capacitate po at nagkakaroon ho kami ng opisina sa unang pagkakataon ho. Next slide, please. So right now, the plantilla is at 117 and we have 47 COS, which a total of 146. We have 208, Mr. Chair, na gusto ho naming ma-fill up within this year po. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Mr. Chair, may I request that Yusek Carlos Kita, our Yusek for Admin and Finance, be recognized to
Yes. Go ahead,
pass
Yusek
this,
Kita.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, Mr. Chair, allow me to present Arta's budget utilization for fiscal year 2020 and 2021. Next chart. As the advent of COVID-19 pandemic swept the country, actually most of the Arta operation transition or migrated through online and digital platforms. These include but are not limited to the following, like the regulatory impact assessment, trainings, review of compliance to Citizens Charter, information dissemination, and ease of doing business summit. Despite this, however, the authority was able to accomplish its set objective with minimal cost. And as a result, for fiscal year 2020, the continuing appropriation amounted to 40.33 million. Next, please. The passage of National Budget Circular number 580 actually resulted to the discontinuance of the following expenses for MOE amounting to 80 million and a capital outlay of 20 million. Actually, this resulted to the non-procurement of our service vehicles and other organizational equipment, Mr. Chair. Next, please. For the fiscal year 2019 continuing appropriations per expense class, as of December 31, 2020, out of the 21 million continuing appropriation, Arta was not able to utilize 5.6 million. Hence, this automatically reverted back to the National Treasury on December 31, 2020. Next, please. This is just the breakdown of the continuing appropriation by project activities and programs. For fiscal year 2020, current appropriation per expense class as of 31 December 2020, out of the 112 million allotment, the balance remained to be 40.5 million. This has a low rate of utilization. However, in the next slide that I'll be presenting, we will show the Arta's catch-up plan. Next, please. This is just the breakdown of the same appropriation per PAP, as indicated. For fiscal year 2021, the current appropriation per expense class as of June 30, 2021, as indicated, has a grand total of 146 million, which have a fairly good utilization rate of, and the remaining balance is 46.86 million. I would like to emphasize that for this year, Arta has no capital outlay. Next. This is the breakdown of the 2021 current appropriation per PAPs. Next. For fiscal year 2020 continuing appropriation per expense class as of June 30, 2021, as indicated, out of the 40 million appropriation, continuing appropriation, there is an standing balance of 34.9 million. This will be the subject of the catch-up plan, actually, Mr. Chair. Next. This is further broken down by PAP, as indicated. Next. At this point, may I present, Mr. Chair, the catch-up plan of the Arta. Under the general administration and support, out of the 34.9 million, we have allocated 21.9 million, the status of which are as indicated, most are ongoing. And I would like to emphasize that only for the month of August of this year that we were able to procure one service motor vehicle. So we only have one service motor vehicle as of this moment, Mr. Chair. Next. For operations, we allocated 12.8 million, and these are mostly ongoing as indicated in this chart. Next, please. This is just the status as of 30 September 2021 of the 2020 continuing appropriation. But we expect that by the end of the year, we will be able to completely utilize this remaining balance. Next. At this point, I'd like to present, Mr. Chair, the COA findings and recommendation, as well as Arta's action on this. For 2020, we received an audit observation memorandum, specifically on the non-submission of financial reports, vouchers, and other documents for 2020, mainly due to the resignation of the accounting personnel who did not actually turn over the necessary documents for the authority to be able to really comply with this requirement. Next. These, Mr. Chair, are the audit recommendations. One is to prepare internal guidelines on the turnover of documents for resigning or retiring personnel. And this had been fully complied with the issuance of department order on 22 July with specifying the guidelines on the turnover of personnel. The second recommendation is to communicate with the resigned personnel. And again, we were able to fully comply with this with the issuance of our letter demanding the said resigned employee to comply with the turnover of the documents that are necessary for the completion of these documents by the authorities. Next, please. And the third observation and recommendation is to require the chief accountant to submit to the audit team all the financial reports and other supporting documents. And again, this has been fully complied on July 2021. And this compliance was acknowledged by the audit team leader as indicated in this acknowledgement letter, Mr. Chair. This is to present, Mr. Chair, the fiscal year 2022 budget proposal.
Finally,
And
after 1 hour, nasa budget na tayo.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your
Mag-isang oras
patience.
na tayo, Secretary.
Yes, sir. And
It's
thank
2
you,
o'clock.
sir.
You know, the DSWD budget at 9:30, the presentation, that's a 100 or 200 billion peso budget. It took 5 minutes. Yours is a 100 million peso budget, but it's taking 1 hour to get to the budget. Intro pa lang yon. So I hope we can speed things up, especially I hope this is not emblematic of how you do your presentations and your directives to the other agencies, because efficiency is important, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, sir. We assure you, sir, it's not, we'll get to the point, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Thanks,
please,
sir.
please.
Mr. Chairman, dagdagan niya raw ng 3 zero para 200 billion na.
Pag ganun kalaki, mas maiksi ang presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, may I continue, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please continue.
This is our budget proposal for 2022 based on the NEP, 241 million. Next slide, please. This is broken down into this, Mr. Chair. Next. It is further broken down as follows. Next. Again, the same breakdown by PAPs. Next. This is only to emphasize the breakdown of allocation by expense plus from 2020 to 2022. And as indicated, we have an increasing personnel services as well as MOE. Again, no capital outlay for the 2022. Next. This is just the same broken down into PAP. Next, please. This is the unreleased. This is the summary of the fiscal 2020 appropriation, resulting to the non-release of the 100 million. Next. This is the breakdown of the unreleased 100 million for 2020. Next. Just the summary again of that unreleased portion. Next. Our budget proposal actually was 280 million versus the NEP TBM issued, which is 241. Next. Again, by PAP. Next, please. This is only a presentation of the general management and supervision for 2020. Most of the activities, please, as indicated. Next, please. Next. Okay, next. Next, please. And for the PAP1 monitor and evaluate compliance, we have the following activities. Next. Next, please. Next. Okay, please. Next. And for PAP2, next. Okay, next. Go ahead. And PAP3, legal services and public assistance. Next. These are the outcome indicators and output indicators. Next. Which was also briefed earlier. Next, please. Arta is supportive of the following bills pending in Congress, and we are also focusing on this to improve the performance of Arta. Next. And finally, we are requesting the Congress, Mr. Chair, the Senate, total amount of additional 108 million. Next. Broken down into this. So, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for hearing us. Thank you for your patience.
Salamat, Yusek Kita. Thank you, Secretary Bellica. Hopefully, you have a shortened version of that in the future, no? For our 2023 budget, masyadong mahaba yung presentasyon natin. And you speeded through the important part, actually, the budget part. That's the most important part. Parang pinasadahan lang po natin. I'll turn it over to our Vice Chair, Senator Win, for his questions. Then I'll ask my questions afterwards. Go ahead, Vice Chair Win Gatchalian. Senator Win.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I was saying earlier, if you want to speed it up, dagdagan nyo ng 3 para 200 billion yung pondo nila. Well, first of all, good afternoon, Secretary Jeremiah. And I was going to ask about EODB. I know it's been discontinued, but our last ranking was 95 out of 190 countries. And this was a great improvement from 113 or 124 in 2019. So malaking improvement siya. However, na-discontinue yung EODB rankings. Even though we improved at 95 ranking, we're still in the middle of the pack. We're not in the first quartile or even the first quintile, obviously. My question is, what are the plans of Arta? Assuming, if ever the EODB will continue in some form or some brand, what do you plan to do to improve our rankings to reach at least naman the first quartile of the 190 countries? Let's just assume that, or let's just pretend that EODB will continue. I know that in your presentation earlier that's one of the indicators, one of the measure that you have been that you will be using. So, what are your plans to improve our rankings? You're on mute.
Mute yata kayo, Sec.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Mr. Senator. Sir, salamat po. Okay, sir. Ang plano po namin, una po, Mr. Chair, Arta in 2020, last year, we were able to map out, sir, the reform initiatives for the doing business survey of World Bank. We're able to map out already kung ano po yung mga reform initiatives na kinakailangan natin at least to reach the top 40 percentile, sir. That was the goal po talaga namin sana by 2022. 40th percentile, I think that's around, if I'm not mistaken, sir, around 70 or realistically, Mr. Chair, 70 or 60, which would really be terrific for the country. Tapos, Senator Windsor, sa akin ho kasi, nung akin ho tinitingnan yung doing business survey na yan, parang mas mahalaga sa akin, Senator, sir, yung scores na pinofocus ng bansa. Kasi po, yung ranking, minsan, sir, dumadami yung mga bagong kasama na mga bansa, which would result sa pagtaas ng ranking, pero hindi pala tayo nag-improve kasi ho, yung scores natin hindi gumalaw. So, ang target natin sana, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chair, is umabot tayo ng at least 75% ang score sa EODB score. Yun po ang gusto ko na personal goal po natin. Kasi sabi nga sir, kahit sa school, dapat maka 75 ka. So we are at 62, Mr. Chair, when we started. Which is an improvement from 57 when nung pagpasok po ng Arta nasa 57 in 1 year's time at 62. Ang gusto namin sana mag 75 tayo, sir. So we already were able to craft a reform agenda, and we presented this in the cabinet last year, sometime January yata, sir, January 3. And it was approved. So ito po yung ongoing namin na mga reforms, Senwin. And dahil naka black and white na po ito, and meron na ho tayong mga committees na nabuo po no per indicators, Senwin. Big sabihin tuloy-tuloy pa rin ho, itinutulak pa rin ho namin ito kasi naka-program na siya, sir, eh. So hindi ho ito maititigil no dun sa 10 indicators ng doing business survey. But sir, let me just also give a little bit perspective on the doing business survey. Kaya ho kami naglabas ng Nehemiah program, sir. Kasi medyo limited po kasi ang scope at nakaka-capture ng doing business survey. An example po niyan, sir, is yung starting a business po. Ang kina-capture lang niya Quezon City. So malaki ho ang improvement na Quezon City since last year, and nagpasalamat ho kami kila Mayor Joy kasi na-automate na ho nila finally yung kanila pong process. Pero may mga ibang LGU, sir, katulad po, I hope you don't mind, sir, katulad ho ng Valenzuela, katulad ho ng Parañaque, na medyo matagal na pong may one-stop shop. In fact, could actually compete globally kasi 10-second business permit nandyan. Pero hindi ho nakaka-capture sa doing business ng World Bank. So, kaya Mr. Chair, kanina nung start po ng presentation namin, pinakita ko po yung regulatory management system journey ng Pilipinas. Ayon naman, Mr. Senator, sa OECD. Kasi I think, sir, long-term, pag nag-usapan, 20 years na ang Philippines na hindi gumagalaw doon sa regulatory management system level. 4 levels lang yun, sir, no? 4 levels, no? Starter stage, yung enabled stage, and then up to the embedded. So, finally, Mr. Vice Chair, by this year, hopefully, mag-graduate tayo from the starter to enabled. And I think, sir, kung sa totoo po, mukhang yun ang mas significant na indicator natin right now, sir. Kasi medyo yung maturity na slow burn siya, sir, pero but it's really foundational. So tuloy-tuloy pa rin, sir, and nabanggit ko rin po kanina, we would want to localize also, Mr. Vice Chair, the EODB ranking sa mga LGUs at tsaka ho yung mga NGAs. Sisimulan ho namin this year together with PCCI. Pipili ho siguro, sir, ng top 10 na NGAs tsaka top 10 ho ng mga LGUs according to their categories.
Secretary, I'll go to that later on. But on concrete terms, what are the things that you plan to implement so that our EODB scores will improve? Yung konkretong mga programa, things that we can see, feel, and experience. On concrete terms, what are those reforms that you plan to that you have implemented or you plan to implement?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, if I may. Sir, unang-una po yung Central Business Portal natin, Mr. Senator. Kasi yun po ang talagang medyo sweeping ho yung magiging improvement niya, hindi lang sa isang city. Pero yung starting a business po natin through the Central Business Portal, ma-reduce po natin from 33 days according to World Bank to less than 1 day, sir. So yung CBP right now, we launched it last January 28. Kasama na po doon ng SEC, BIR, SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. Ang pinakamalaki po natin, sir, ngayon na siguro challenge po dyan sa 5 ahensya na yan na normally dinadaanan in starting a business is SEC. Primarily, sir, yung business name reservation po nila. Kasi pagka nagpa-reserve ka ng pangalan ho sa kanila, medyo matagal sir eh. Yun ang naging challenge po nila. Pero they already have a program already which they call one sec program nila that they are going to roll out by October. Na kakayanin na sir ang registration ng businesses in one day. So magkakabit-kabit yan Mr. Senator through the Central Business Portal. And kung ang LGU po is automated na rin po no na nagagawa na rin po na one day. We are seeing sir ng less than 1 day or 2 days kaya na pong marehistro ang business, ang starting a business. That's one sir, that's one project na amin ho tinututukan. Second Mr. Vice Chair is the National Single Window Project or the trade through the TradeNet platform. Ito naman sir, 73 trade regulatory government agencies would be connected through one platform. Ang naging challenge po nila dyan is not the automation side, Mr. Vice Chair, Senator Win. Ang challenge po ng mga trade regulatory agencies na naabutan ho namin is yung streamlining ho nila. Hindi ho sila kasi makapag-automate, sir, nang hindi sila nag-streamline. Pero ngayon ho, no, out of the 73, 69, 68 trade regulatory government agencies na po no ang patapos na sa kanilang onboarding diyan sa TradeNet. So ibig sabihin sir, ma-automate rin ho natin 'yan, mas mapapabilis na rin po 'yan. And yung transparency po on trade. Tataas din ho yung competitiveness natin diyan on trading across borders. Mr. Senator. Third sir is yung project po natin dun sa construction permits, sir, na ngayon po patapos na ho tayo ng GMC natin. Medyo hindi lang sir na inabutan lang sir ng panahon ng filing ng candidacy. So medyo yung iba hong pipirma doon sa ating GMC sir is hindi ho natuloy, pero around 10 government agencies po no nakapirma na po yung iba. Pero it would reduce yung atin pong dealing with construction permits from 147 days to around 3 days to 20 days na lang, sir. So, yung tatlo po muna na yun, sir, kasi 10 indicators po yan, sir. Meron na po tayo dun sa 10 indicators, paying taxes and everything. We could submit to your office, Senator, and maybe some legislative matters makatulong din po ang Senado on this.
Secretary, I suggest to still use the EODB measurements, no, because that's the only global ranking so far as ease of doing business is concerned. Of course, minus the controversy, but there are useful indicators there that we can use to improve ourselves. And I can see from your programs and the list that you mentioned that nakakasanay itong mga programs na ito to improve our ranking or improve our score. So I strongly suggest that we should continue that so that we will not lose direction. And then you mentioned earlier the EODB for LGUs. I support that. In fact, I listed that in my list of questions. You know, the mga mayors, alam ni Chair Sani ito, mga mayors and governors, bragging rights yung mga awards eh. No? And gustong-gusto na, before, gustong-gusto, sinasalihan ko lahat ng award na pwede para to get that bragging rights. And I think one of the most important reforms that we should cascade in the local governments is fighting red tape at the local level because it starts with them. It really starts with them, especially for businesses. Normally naman, these businesses, they don't talk to DTI or to DOF. It's really the mayors and the local government. So I support the localization of the EODB. In fact, we can stretch it in terms of giving awards para may bragging rights sila. And then I also suggest, other than an awarding body or a grading body, is also a body that documents reforms and cascade the reforms. Yung galing po, I don't know, Sec, if you've heard galing po, but galing din ang strategy, din ang concept ng galing po to document best practices and cascade it to the local government. So something along the line so that local governments will learn from other local governments. And but when do you plan to start that, Sec? Because that's a really exciting concept that you mentioned.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, ongoing na po. Nung simula nung diniscontinue po, we got the news, I think 2 weeks ago, about the discontinuance. We immediately proposed to the Advisory Council of Arta, composed of DTI, Secretary Mon Lopez, DOF, DICT, DILG, and na magkaroon nga ho na to, and ini-incorporate po natin ito, Mr. Senator, dun sa report card survey na ginagawa po ng Arta ngayon. Kasi sir, yung report card survey, ang amin pong tansya po dito is matapos po namin by November the guidelines for the report card survey. Ito ho yung gagamitin ng mga agencies, Mr. Senator Win, para sukatin nila yung kanila pong progress. Pero in that regard, may kausap na rin ho kami na ibang mga private sector. Una-una na po ang PCCI. Nakikipagtulungan kami sa kanila kasi we also want to recognize, sir, yung kasi medyo sila, sir, nakakaramdam ng nangyayari sa ground. Kahit mag-report naman ho na mag-report sa amin ng mga government agencies, kung wala ho kaming private sector feedback na maganda from them, so hindi realistic. So ito po, no, sir, by December, meron ho siguro kami mailalabas na at least dun sa priority agencies namin, Mr. Senator, around 75 po yan, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, na priority agencies po ng Arta. Makapaglabas ho kami ng ranking. And hopefully, sir, baka konting recognition or bragging rights, magamit din po nila, sir.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct, no? Because government ranking another government sometimes doesn't establish credibility with the private sector. We need to get the private sector on board, no? Because they're the ones affected directly. On my last question, Mr. Chairman, we cannot fight red tape without digitalization and automation. We can talk about red tape all day, but without digitalization and automation, it's really useless. No? My question is, how many LGUs are already automated / digitalized, and how many main government agencies are digitalized and automated? Because reach all we want, but if we don't automate it on the ground, nothing's going to happen. People will still line up for a long time. Ito lang yung COMELEC lang. If you see the queue, grabbing COMELEC queue. So I just want to get a picture of how many LGUs are automated na, at least insofar as business permits, real estate applications, and engineering applications are concerned. And then how many po sa national government?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, on the LGU po, sir, ang isa sa mga struggles po nila, Mr. Chair, is yung automation nila kasi you cannot automate without first streamlining your processes. So starting when we started in Arta, yung unang tinutukan natin dyan, sir, is yung pagkakaroon nila ng BOSS. Ibig sabihin, kung wala pa silang e-boss o electronic business one-stop shop, at least meron na silang business one-stop shop. Pero last June, Mr. Vice Chair Senator Win, June 17, 2021, binigyan ho na ang deadline po ng mga LGUs na mag-automate na kanila pong mga business permitting licensing system o yung kanilang mga e-boss. With this, Mr. Chair, meron ho kasing tayong itinutulak na libreng automation software yung tawag ho natin ng IBPLS, yung Integrated Business Permitting Licensing System na dinevelop na po ng DICT. So, ito ho yung tinutulak ng Arta sa mga LGUs, Mr. Vice Chair Senator Win. Right now, yun ho may numbers kami, 902 LGUs na po ang nag-subscribe, sir, ng IBPLS, ng Integrated Business Permitting Licensing System. Bukod pa po dito, yung mga LGUs na may kani-kaniyang mga automation system. We don't have the exact number, Mr. Chair, of those LGUs na hindi gumamit ng IBPLS. Meron, alam ho namin, there's around mga 100 LGUs po na alam ho namin, I could easily say na meron pa ho. No? So, 902 po, Mr. Chairman, ang gumagamit ng IBPLS. Ang maganda po dito, hindi lang yung business permitting licensing system nila, yung mayor's permit to do business, kasama na rin ho dito yung building permits. Building permits po. So, that's why it's called integrated. But hindi pa ho lahat ng 902 na yan, sir, natapos nila yung kanilang, ibig sabihin, fully operational. They are, according to DICT, by the end of the year or by the end of the term, ma-operationalize daw po lahat ng 900 and 2 na to na IBPLS. Mr. Chair, on your question po naman on the national government agencies, naglabas po ang Arta ng memorandum circular sa lahat po ng national government agencies na gumamit ho ng electronic platforms. It doesn't need to be shabby, it doesn't need to be expensive. Kasi nakikita na po, Mr. Chair, yung paggamit ng emails, paggamit po even Viber, and pati yung mga delivery services. So, yung mga major agencies po na amin pong minomonitor, Mr. Chairman, we call it priority national government agencies. Lahat po sila, Mr. Chairman, meron na po silang automation programs. Pero hindi ho lahat sila, Mr. Chair, end-to-end, yung tinatawag po, sir. Yun ang problema po kasi, Senator Win, sir, is yung end-to-end system eh. Yun, sir, ang gusto natin makuha. Ibig sabihin, sir, kung yung payment lang ang automated, pero hindi naman automated yung permit, hindi ho electronic permit, kailangan pa rin pumunta ng tao doon sa ahensya. So, merong lahat ho sila, masasabi ko, sir, meron hong automation pero hindi lahat sila nag-end-to-end. So, kailangan yung submission automated, digital payments, that's why we're supporting po ang initiative po ng ating chairman talaga on digital payments, and also electronic permits through the use of digital signatures. Yan po talaga, sir, ang sasabihin namin na tatlong low-lying fruits na pwede ho nilang gawin ng lahat ng agencies. At pag wala ho sila noon, pinagpapaliwanag po namin sila, sir.
Secretary, I strongly suggest that we come up with an inventory of LGUs who are, of all LGUs, those who have fully automated and those who are not automated or partially automated, just to give us a picture of how far are we in terms of LGU automation. Dapat, to be honest about it, by now, 100% of our LGUs are fully automated, at least in the business permit side. No? In the business, engineering, and real estate, yung RPT side. These are the most commonly used services at the LGU level. So, and I support that, yung BPLS na pinapamigay. In fact, that's a way for LGUs to comply right away because typically the LGUs will complain of the cost eh. Pero kung out of the box na itong mga system, gagamitin na lang nila, mabilis ma-automate natin yung mga LGUs. And insofar as national government is concerned, we have to learn from this pandemic. This pandemic really forced all of us to use the internet as a way to communicate with our government. So I filed a bill, I call it the full Digital Transformation Bill by 2022. Itong bill na ito is to mandate all offices to digitalize by 2022. Obviously, that's not gonna happen. But let's grade them. I-grade natin itong mga LGUs and national offices in terms of where they are in terms of digitalization and automation. That's the only way, Secretary. Pag hindi natin mag-grade sila and mano-mano pa rin, wala tayong magagawa.
With your permission, Senator Win, with your permission,
Sure.
you think pwede natin isama sa Seal of Good Local Governance as one of the metrics para ma-award sila? Kasi may flexibility. I think the law has some flexibility there for, kumbaga, modernization, di ba? So, I totally agree completely. 200% with what you're saying. Very good. Talaga, dyan mararamdaman talaga ng tao kapag na internalize talaga ng bawat LGU. So I totally agree with Senator Win.
Chairman Sani is the author of the Seal of Good Housekeeping when he was the chairman of the Local Government Committee. Kaya kabisado niya ang bill na yan. And I suggest Belica look at that kasi we can incorporate that automation in the seal.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Sani, that's my last just in closing, kahit na maliit po yung budget ng Arta, mahaba po yung presentation, and dynamic naman. No? Yan talaga, ganyan talaga. Pag bata po ang chairman at nagli-lead ng agency, very dynamic. So I support po the Arta and the Office of Secretary Belica. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Salamat po, boss.
Thank you very much to our Vice Chair, Senator Win, and I totally agree with him. It shows a lot of passion and enthusiasm on the part of the agency heads and its undersecretaries. So it's understandable. There's a lot of passion there given the new agency and desire to do much good. And then we really appreciate the support of Senator Win because he's a multi-awarded 9-year local chief executive of a very progressive LGU, Valenzuela City, who's been the recipient of many awards of many bodies. And he mentioned Galing Pook is one of those, no? So if you can create your own metric, but you can also work within and copy the best practices of this existing. Yung Galing Pook is a private initiative. Yung Seal of SGLG is Seal of Good Local Governance is a DILG given award, pero may flexibility naman sa law using metrics like education, health, development, etc. No? Pwedeng tamang-tama yung sinabi ni Senator Win, yung tama siya yung digitalization is crucial, especially during a pandemic. Doon nakita yung pangangailangan talaga. So we were forced to do it. So yun ang magandang byproduct. Tapos yung talagang understanding what it involves. Kailangan may incentive din yung local government. And I think that's it. Because nakita ko yan sa SGLG, talagang yung other, yung sinasabi ni Senator Win na healthy competition, sinasabi nyo rin yan, Secretary. I think that will activate it kasi yung ibang, pag kinausap mo yung ibang mayors and governors, medyo napapahiya sila pag hindi sila nanalo for this year, ganyan. Pero yung mga kasama nila, nakikita nila, nandoon sa Manila Hotel, tumatanggap ng award, pinapanood nila, medyo nai-engganyo sila. No? That's human nature, I think. No? And it's a race to the top, which is something we should encourage. So thank you very much for your very good ideas, born out of experience, born out of best practices and legislation, Senator Win. Senator Aimee is I don't know if the DSWD budget has been terminated. She's chairing it. Senator Aimee, would you like to ask any questions? Comsec, tapos na ba yung DSWD? Director Irene?
Sorry, tapos na po.
Tapos na? Does Vice Chair Marcos wish to ask any questions, Arta? Kasi if not, we will terminate na and recommend to the plenary. Yeah, siguro wala na, no?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Sir?
Secretary.
Sir, we'll submit, sir, what we have, the data on the unbundling nung 902 na sino yung fully automated partly. But also, sir, I just want to say that recently, Valenzuela I think yan sila talaga sir ang isa sa mga benchmark po ng mga namin when challenging the LGUs. In fact, malaking bagay sir yung pakikipagtulungan din namin ni Mayor Rex. Kasi normally sir kapag ka may mga problem ang LGUs, pwede namin silang i-direct dun sa process po. Because if it is being done already by one LG, ibig sabihin sir pwede. Ang challenge nga dito, Mr. Chair talaga and Senator Win, Mr. Vice Chair, yung assertion of local autonomy normally na nila sinasabi sa nagkakaroon ng
That's why you work with
variations.
incentives rather than
Yes,
it's
sir.
more carrot rather than stick eh. Kasi wala ka masyadong stick in view of local autonomy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yun lang, sir. I just want
yung
to say.
sinabi rin, don't forget yung sinabi rin ni Senator Win na of the 1,000 plus LGUs, parang 600 lang yata yung nag-comply dun sa slide ninyo. That will be a big help kasi to us, especially with the Mandanas Doctrine, in trying to figure out how do these LGUs cope, how can they comply? Because there are a lot of laws that are not complied with, like the solid waste management. there are more LGUs who do not comply with it than those who comply. So we don't want to make dead laws, diba? We want laws that are realistic and that will really lead to progress. So yun yung I think that's where he's driving at, no? That's something we need to look at. If you could help us, yung information gathering is very crucial, Secretary, no? So tulungan niyo po kami diyan.
Mr. Chair, if I may also say, yung sa 1,000, yung mga 600 na mga LGUs na nagsumite ng kanilang Citizens Charter, yung balanse ho kasi nun, sir, sa totoo lang, sir, I have every intention talaga of, finding a way to really crack the whip if needed. Ang doon lang, sir, sa batas ng Arta ngayon, sir, 11.032, wala kasi sa Section 21 na yung punishable acts, yung non-submission of Citizens Charter, but it is in the local government code. So what, just to be creative, sir, with our approach, we are already endorsing this. Kapag munisipyo yan, ini-endorse na po namin sa probinsya, yung mga listahan ng mga LGUs. And kung ito naman ay provinces and cities, sa Office of the President, Mr. Chair.
Good,
so,
good. Very good.
But at the same time, we are communicating already with the ULAP on this. Kasi ano to sir pagka ang sa amin lang sir, pag wala kang Citizens Charter, we've been sending notices of warning already. So yun lang sir, yun po ang aming direction po dyan. And in fact, nagpapadala na ho kami sa mga provinces. Sorry sir, sangguniang panglalawigan sa mga munisipyo naman sir, sa Office of the President, kung province at mga cities.
Okay. Thank you. Sen Win, anything else? I think we're done otherwise, no?
No more that. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our Vice Chair, Sen Win, for the very good ideas, and thank you for the comprehensive presentation, Sec Belica, and to the Yusek Kita and Yusek Perez, and we'll work on helping you with your capital outlay, especially your vehicles, no? Kailangan nyo yun para makaikot din kayo. So, rest assured, if there are no more questions and comments from our members, we'll welcome a motion to recommend the budget of Arta. Senwin, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move to endorse the budget of Arta to the plenary.
Thank you. Without prejudice to any possible increases, there being no objection, the budget of the Anti-Red Tape Authority, or Arta, is hereby endorsed for plenary debate and approval without prejudice to any possible increases. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to Senator Win, our Vice Chair, and to Secretary Belica, Yusek Kita, Yusek Perez, and all the hardworking men and women of the Arta. Huwag kayong magsawa dyan dahil you are really a disruptor by nature, no? By definition. You're meant to disrupt getting the agencies out of their bad habits. So talagang huwag kayong magsawa na parang nagdi-disrupt kayo. That's really your role. You're a
Thank you,
disruptor
Senator.
for good in our government. So salamat sa
Thank you, sir.
inyo, Secretary.
Thank you, sir. Mabuhay po kayo. Marami pong salamat sa Senado sa inyo, Mr. Chairman. Salamat
Okay.
po.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Stay safe. Thank you. Then, Win.